My ex-best friend cut me off during my most miserable time. Now he's begging for help, but I turned the tables and publicly shamed his lies. I'm not asking if I did the right thing. I know I did. This is a pure rant about this emotional day because if anyone is going to understand, it's you all in the child-free community. Here's the gist. A former friend, Dave, not his real name, who I haven't had contact with for almost 3 years, got in touch with me today. He claims he has a home emergency and needs a place for him, his wife, and their 3 kids to stay while the situation gets fixed. This is the same guy who, when I was going through something traumatic, told me he couldn't be my friend because I'd be a bad influence on his kids for being child-free. A bit of background on why the friendship ended. I was in a high-stress situation and very sad. My father's death was just one of the terrible things that happened in a span of 3 months. I was looking for consolation, but instead, Dave told me that my child-free lifestyle was a bad influence on his family. He had a wife and 2 kids at the time. In short, they didn't want to spend time around me because I wasn't worth it when they had more valuable friends. This was someone I had known since graduate school. We spent a lot of time doing fun stuff together, like rock climbing. Dave and I were part of a group of mutual buddies who regularly rented lake houses or winter lodges for summer and winter sports activities. We're talking 10+ years of friendship. To ditch me because he thought I wasn't useful hurt a lot, especially when I was dealing with really sad stuff. It hurt even more because I was there for him when he found out his mom had cancer, and later at her funeral. I haven't spoken or texted him in almost 3 years. I chalked it up to people getting really weird when they have kids, falling into a traditional, conservative mindset that anyone who isn't wanting or working toward a Leave It to Beaver 2.5 kids situation is somehow suspect. Then today, I saw a text pop up on my phone from Dave. I never erased or blocked his number, so his name was still saved, and there it was. He asked me to let him, his wife, and their 3 kids stay at my house because their water heater broke, and it's kind of an emergency. He knows I now live in the same city as him, and it would be a really big favor. He said I'd owe him. Okay, so lots of emotions with that. Apparently, since he told me I'm a bad influence, he and his wife had a 3rd kid, a 5-month-old baby. My biggest question was, why ask me of all people? I asked Dave why he's asking me to do this for him. His response was basically that he's out of options and no one has room for him and his 3 kids, especially with his 5-month-old. I asked him why he can't arrange a hotel room for them. He said that would be really expensive, and they're already in a lot of medical debt from their newest kid having to be in the NICU when he was born. I said that sounds tough, but again, why me? He said he knows I helped someone last year with emergency housing and saw I had enough extra room for guests. Since I was so generous back then, I could be generous with him now. I knew exactly what he was talking about, but I really wanted to know how he knew about that situation. It was delicate, and I thought it was a private family matter. He said it was posted on Facebook by the couple I helped. Quick segue. About this time last year, one of my good college friends, Kate, who has lupus, got COVID-19. She was being so careful too. It sucked because this was before the vaccines rolled out first for vulnerable people. She's my age, mid-30s, and very healthy, aside from lupus. She's a marathon runner, actually. Kate's lupus made COVID even worse, and she ended up in the ICU. On top of that, she was pregnant, and her husband had to make the decision to save her life over the fetus. Basically, it was either giving life-saving medicine and care to Kate at the expense of the fetus, or she dies. Thankfully, he's a good guy and let the doctors end the pregnancy to save her life. Kate's mother was awful and said that her daughter should have died with the baby. She said Kate's life wasn't worth much anymore, and even tried to bring in a priest to give her last rites while Kate was in a coma. This caused a huge, dramatic fallout, as you can imagine. Kate's brother and his wife needed a place to stay away from their mother immediately. I had an extra room, and I'm an easy distance from the hospital. They stayed with me for 2 days until they secured a hotel room in one of those long-term residence hotels. No one was sure Kate was going to make it out alive, so they understandably wanted to be nearby. They lived out of state and were staying with a terrible mother while their sister was in the hospital. Thankfully, Kate made it out alive and has since disowned her mother. She actually remembers, while in the coma, people talking about the priest trying to break in. I let Kate's brother and his wife into my home because these people were good people, have always been supportive, and still are some of the most gracious people I know. Apparently, unbeknownst to me because I'm not on Facebook, either Kate's brother or his wife posted something about how much of a decent person I was to help them out in a dire moment of need, a light during a very dark period for them. They told me as much to my face. I just didn't know they shared the situation on social media. So, back to today, Dave saw that post last year, kept it in his head, and thought I would let his family and kids into my home with open arms. Frankly, I told him to shove it. I was pissed he was trying to guilt me into letting him and his family into my house for an unspecified amount of time. He knows I'm child-free. Hell, he even said me being child-free is a bad influence on his family. Yet, all of a sudden, when it's convenient for him, I'm magically not a bad influence, and he should be able to waltz back into my life without even a single apology for the shitty things he said 3 years ago. I told him being child-free means I don't want kids in my house for an extended period. If I did, I wouldn't be child-free. I said I wasn't going to disrupt my life and my 2 cats to be a bed and breakfast for his 3 kids. He said I was selfish and to think of his kids, that there's no hot water in his house. I told him, tough. He can whip out a credit card or get one of his relatives to cover a hotel stay. He gave me more excuses, brought up their medical debt again, and said it'll only be for a few days. I said that multiple days for a broken water heater sounds extremely suspect. Stuff like that can be fixed relatively quickly. I know residency laws in our state. If someone stays 7 days in someone's home, they can claim tenants' rights. I was not about to risk this turning into a thing where I can't get rid of them. He told me off and then said he'd blast me all over social media and to all my friends, saying I won't help a family of 5 in an emergency and that I want little kids to suffer. I told him to pound sand and eat a dick. He hasn't been a friend for years. He doesn't even know my address. All he knows is that I live seemingly close in the same city and that I live alone. He can blast me on social media all he wants. I'm not on Facebook, so I don't give a single fuck what the gaggle of Karens think of me. I told him social media isn't real life. If he does share this with my actual friends, they'd laugh right in his face. I told him I have all his texts as proof of the way he spoke to me and how he's a big jerk. I told him he used to be a decent guy, that we had a lot of nice times together, and that I'm still sorry about his mom. I'm sorry he went down this path in life, since it sounds like he must be really miserable, but he's a bad influence on my life, so I just can't have him around. I said I'm sure he'd understand since he said the same about me. That was the gist of the last thing I said. He went off until I blocked him. I'm really sad about it. He really used to be a decent person 10 years ago, and his mom was a lovely woman. I'm now bracing myself against flying monkeys who may come out of the woodwork and try to guilt me into taking in his family. I can't wait to tell them to take in his family themselves. I already talked about the situation with my 2 best friends, and they were shocked that Dave was so brazen and had no shame. They thought it was suspect that he was so pushy about getting into my home for days. One friend said her water heater broke recently, and a plumber came out the same day. It only took a day to fix. Being against the hotel idea was a red flag to them. They're curious about what the whole story is. I agreed that it feels like something's missing. I do feel a righteousness about all this. I know I did the right thing. I hate that a previous kindness was used as a weapon against me. Years ago, I thought maybe he had a point, that I was somehow not good enough because I was pretty depressed. People don't want sad people around. Now with clarity, I see that he has a profoundly bad character. But it did reopen old, sad memories. Anyway, thanks for reading if you made it all the way through. I had to get this off my chest and vent. I'm happy and a little surprised that most things have resolved a little more than 24 hours after they started. I guess this is the benefit of people working on your behalf behind the scenes. I also want to thank all of those who engaged on the last post. I appreciate the support and knew you'd understand my venting. Ripped my inbox, but I did read everything. And you all are the best Reddit community. Not a single troll, which I think might be a Reddit miracle. I'm writing this with a pot of hot tea and recommend you do the same. This is going to be long. Well, all of your guts were right. A broken water heater making a family of 5 need alternative housing was fishy, especially since Dave doesn't even have a water heater. It was all a lie. Cue all of you going, I knew it. So here's the deal. Dave sold his house 6 months ago, and he and his wife Shelley have been trying to buy a bigger home ever since. Right now, as I type this, they're already in a hotel with their kids. They have plenty of hot water. I can imagine all of you nodding your heads saying, yep. My sister is in another time zone and has a few hours on me. She's been working on finding out about Dave. Her husband used to moonlight as a private investigator in grad school, and she has a preternatural ability to find details about people. She's a little creepy, in a good way. She also has a social media presence, whereas I do not. I gave her Dave's full real name and things I knew about him, like an address I had for him and the names of his wife and the 2 kids I knew. She went to town. She told me that his home went on the market about 6 months ago and sold pretty quickly for a ton more than what it was bought for years ago. It's a seller's market, and it was a huge sale. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. She then said she looked around in the city and surrounding towns and couldn't find him buying any other property. It looked like his house sold for a high 6-figure sum, but that's it. So, I texted my 2 friends from yesterday. I told them what my sister found, that it looks like Dave sold his house and doesn't actually have a water heater problem because he doesn't have a water heater. My friends were like, WTF? So one of the 2 friends, Allison, got in touch with my sister and they went on a social media deep dive. My sister was very worried I was being conned. Allison was a grad school mate along with me and Dave 10 plus years ago. She was never super close with him, and he wasn't on her radar, but she was among his Facebook friends. Thanks go out to people on Facebook friending literally everybody they even slightly know. At about the same time, I heard back from Kate's brother and sister-in-law, who stayed with me back when Kate was in the hospital. It was Kate's sister-in-law, Laura, who posted about being thankful for my generosity on Facebook. She confirmed she had posted a couple of pictures, one of my cat, who was looking like she was laying down the house rules, and one of my big plant, a Monstera deliciosa, because she loved it. The thing was, you could extrapolate things about my home, tidy, with a large kitchen and a nice pantry. This will be relevant. I filled Laura in about what was going on, and she was mortified that she might have been partly at fault for why Dave wanted to get into my house. She took down the post, untagging my name, and showed me a screen capture verifying she did so. She asked if she could help with anything else. I told her my sister was doing a deep dive and maybe could use help. I put Laura in contact with my sister. Laura also got in contact with Allison seemingly randomly late in the morning. Allison asked me for screen grabs of the precise point in the text conversation where Dave says his emergency is about the water heater and why he needs me to do him a favor and take in his family and kids for a few days. I gave them to her, and it was radio silence for most of the day. I thought, I wonder what's going on. In the early evening, I got a lot more of the story. I received texts from my sister Allison and Laura. I'm going to try to bullet point it. It's a bit circuitous. Dave and his wife Shelley did sell their house 6 months ago. They wanted more room and bedrooms for their now 3 kids and wanted to upgrade. It being a huge and wild seller's market, their home was estimated to have accrued high 6 figures in equity since they bought it. They were excited to put it on the market. Dave and his wife wanted to get top dollar for the house, so they sold it without a contingency that they first needed to buy a home before the buyer could move in and officially take the house. Dave was convinced that with the huge sale they could get another one quickly. Their house sold fast, and there was a bidding war. Dave bragged about it. He and Shelley went about trying to buy another home, except it wasn't easy at all. All the homes they bid on went to someone who outbid them. The time came for the new buyers to take over the house, and they had to move out. Dave and Shelley didn't think this was a big deal. A friend of theirs took them in with the understanding that it would be temporary and they would be actively buying a house, which Dave and Shelley were doing, but they were still being outbid. They refused to lower expectations or adjust their budget. They wouldn't look at homes the same size as their old one because the whole reason for selling was to get a bigger home. They couldn't win in any of the bidding wars. Dave refused to increase the budget. Indeed, their 3rd kid was born premature and was in the NICU, so they do have medical debt. Dave doesn't want to spend anything more or take out more loans. Dave, Shelley, and the 3 kids went to someone else's place to stay. They continued to look for homes and couldn't get one. This repeated until they were at a 3rd person's home. At this point, people were trying to tell him that maybe it's a good option to wait out the housing bubble when it's not such a seller's market and get an apartment in the meantime. Dave shot this down because an apartment costs money akin to a mortgage. If he's going to pay for living accommodations per month, it better be a mortgage. He thinks paying for an apartment is a money drain. Shelley was even angrier at the suggestion. She didn't want to be in an apartment that would be smaller than their old home. Dave's family seemed to be overstaying their welcome. People were getting annoyed. Dave and Shelley weren't willing to chip in for groceries. Dave's family was now on the 4th place of people willing to take them in. A month ago, they ran out of options for free housing. Hilariously, they were all run out because people needed the room for their own family coming for the holidays. No one wanted to take the freeloaders in anymore. Shelley is a school teacher in the city, and because of that, and with the kids back in school, they really needed to stay in the city. Their only other options for free housing were Dave's brother, who lives about 2 hours away, and Shelley's parents, who live 6 hours away. Neither option was good for Dave and Shelley's jobs, or their kids getting to in-person classes, so Dave and his family needed housing ASAP and booked a hotel. They're really upset about it because their kids are loud and the hotel staff is harping on them to be quieter. Dave and Shelley complain about how they hate living out of a hotel and how it's unfair they can't get a house with all the money they have. To be clear, they have more than enough money to skate by living in a hotel, which is still way pricier than renting an apartment. Dave likes the idea of the hotel because it's not signing a lease. They can leave anytime and they have maid service. Shelley goes all poor me because she says the kids are so sad they don't have a backyard to play in. Being in a hotel doesn't let the kids be kids. Slight segue. Allison went back through Shelley's posts and found a situation where she and a gaggle of her friends were talking not so nicely about me. It was a situation from the start of the pandemic when people were freaking out and buying all the toilet paper. People also bought a lot of foodstuffs before they could be restocked because of panic buying. A person I used to go to grad school with and was friends with got in touch with me to ask how I was holding up. I thought she was contacting me to offer support and be nice. Her motivation was to get me to give her my food. I've had a chest freezer and a well-stocked pantry for a long time. Having a working pantry is something passed down to me from my grandma who survived World War II. My mom did it, and now I do it too. Well, this friend, who was seemingly sweet to me, knew I had a decent amount of food. She said she needed me to give her some of my food because I don't have any kids to feed. She said her kid is a picky eater, and I probably had a bunch of frozen chicken to spare. I was impressed by the audacity and told her that if she was desperate for food, there's a food bank to go to. I'm not going to give her my food just because her son is picky and only eats her homemade chicken nuggets. It's not a food shortage, it's panic buying. If she just gets to the grocery store early in the morning midweek, when they typically restock, she'll easily get chicken. She told me I'm selfish. Apparently, she took this to social media to talk behind my back with others who were spouses of grad school friends. Back to Shelley's posts, Shelley supported the woman who tried to get me to give her my frozen chicken. She also considered me selfish for not helping a mother out. She said it's really weird for me to keep so much food around when it's only me, and that I obviously have problems. If you guessed that the "you're a bad influence" seed was planted by Dave's wife, I think you're correct. When Laura posted about my generosity for letting them stay a couple of days before they found a long-term hotel situation while Kate was hospitalized, there were some comments by Shelley about how nice it was for me to do that, sweet as can be, and that my home looked amazing. This web of friendships is seemingly complex, but basically, it's a lot of people who know each other from grad school. Grad school was tough, and we all let off steam by organizing vacations before most of us were married or had kids yet. I always invited my close college friends who stayed in the state to the group vacations where we'd all pitch in and rent out lake houses or cabins at ski resorts. Recent posts have Shelley going all poor me because she says the kids are so sad they don't have a backyard to play in, and being in a hotel doesn't let the kids be kids. Then there's a weird Shelley post from 2 days ago that sounds like her family has found a place that's so cute and her kids will be able to get out of the hotel situation. She says it has a great kitchen for her kids. Cue Dave texting me yesterday, asking me, after no contact for 3 years, to take in his family for a few days while their broken water heater gets fixed. Obviously, you all know I told him no. Well, my friends saw that Dave and Shelley made some passive-aggressive comments on social media this morning about how society is terrible nowadays when friends renege on their offer of helping families with kids out of a tough situation. Shelley says her cute home situation fell through. She got a bunch of sympathy from her Karen friends. She said her kids are so disappointed. I think this is probably when Allison asked for my screen grabs of Dave's water heater sob story. Allison went on a tear and posted or shared the screen grabs of Dave's water heater lie. She and Laura started calling them out. They shared the truth that Dave and Shelley did not have a new housing situation lined up and were trying to get into my home by lying about a broken water heater, and that I had never agreed to let them stay in my home. Laura called them huge jerks for trying to take advantage of me. Allison went off about the situation from 3 years ago. My real friends, like Allison, were very much there for me, while people like Dave were like, "Yeah, I don't care. Plus, you're a bad influence on my family." Allison let everyone know about Dave calling me a bad influence on his family for my child-free lifestyle, and how he's pathetic for thinking he can walk back into someone's life whom he insulted. Allison is also child-free herself. People told off Dave for being super mean and now wanting favors. It snowballed into people calling him super cheap and a leech. The people who let his family stay with them during the last 6 months came out of the woodwork to lay into him. One person described how dirty Dave's family was and how it was insane how much extra cleaning they had to do. They said his kids had no manners, terrorized their dogs, and it was awesome when they finally left. People expressed anger that they were trying to pull one on me and then tried to make me out to be the bad guy on social media. There were people I hadn't talked to in a long time who said I was a good person, how I helped them in grad school with random things, and that I didn't deserve this. It was really nice to hear. Some related how I've helped people get jobs, something more than Dave has ever done. I'm very involved in the grad school networking community and like sharing job opportunities and wisdom about finding scientific jobs and mentoring. Dave's own brother said he was disgusted by this behavior. He remembered how much I helped when their mom passed away. He said their mom would be rolling in her grave knowing how he was treating people. My sister ended up getting me to Zoom with her and screen shared her monitor to show me what the hoopla looked like. Maybe this is why I never actually got a single message from anyone about not letting a family into my home. I was expecting flying monkeys. I never got them. My God, the schadenfreude. Dave told me he was going to put me on blast on Facebook but ended up getting blasted himself. How stupid. How incredibly stupid. I had the text of him lying about the goddamn water heater. He must have thought, since I wasn't on social media, that I'd never be able to tell others he was lying or know that he was currently enjoying hot hotel water. I feel like I dodged a nuclear-tipped missile. I had to pour myself a drink after work and really think about all this. After considering all the context, I believe Dave and Shelley were going to try to squat in my home. He did go off when I mentioned the 7-day rule when people get tenants' rights in our state. I knew it was fishy, you all called it too. I'm thinking he was a cheap bastard who didn't want to pay more money for a hotel. He still didn't want to find an apartment and had exhausted all in-city free housing opportunities with friends. I was a last-ditch effort. His wife peripherally knew I was amenable to guests. She also knew my home was nice and that I had a ton of food for her kids to eat. They had a reputation already for eating people out of house and home. If they stayed with me for a week, they'd be tenants, and I'd have to spend time kicking them out with the courts, as it probably would have taken months to evict them. It's much easier to run a scam on a single person and push them out of their own home than try to do the same thing with real friends who already have kids and not a lot of ample space. He was only looking for free housing so he'd be able to put every penny he had into his goal of buying a 4+ bedroom house with all the money he got from the sale of his old home. I don't know for certain, but it makes sense. So, I decided to send him one last text. I unblocked him and sent this before reblocking his number. Hey Dave, so I found out you were lying about that water heater. You don't even have a water heater. You're living in a hotel, along with sitting on a huge pile of cash from selling your old home. I think it's real shitty of you for lying to me and trying to get into my home to leech off me, especially because you destroyed our friendship when you called me a bad influence on your family. I didn't tell you back then, but I'm telling you now that you are trash. Your mom would be ashamed of you. I see it's all projection because you are the bad influence, not only on my life but on the lives of others. If you really believed I was a bad influence, you never would have tried to get your family into my home this week. But if you still think I'm some sort of bad influence, then you won't have to worry about me helping you out or granting any sort of favor in the future. I'm going to keep my bad influence far away from your family. Oh, and Shelley sounds like she's become a real treat. The last thing I will do for you, because I'm not a monster, is to say that you need to do your duty as a husband and father and pay to get a stable apartment for your family. Stop playing these freeloader games. Here's a link to our local Craigslist housing page. I'm sure you'll find something. Oh, and hope to see you at the next non-Zoom alumni event. I'm sure it'll be great to catch up in person. So, it's done. I said my piece. Once again, you all were right that something else was going on. I feel really sick right now about how someone could think about doing this to me. I'm also feeling kind of sick thinking about the idea of letting them into my home. That would have been a nightmare.